Until recently, it was hard to think of a post-George Floyd innovation that failed more quickly or more spectacularly than the defund the police movement. As homicide rates ballooned by more than 30%, cities like Los Angeles, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, New York, Austin, Oakland reinstated funds for police departments. They had all made a big show of cutting police funding, only to realize that, in fact, police actually serve a purpose. Imagine that. And then there were the stories of various politicians, including congressmen, who called for defunding the police only to demand police protection when they needed it for themselves. So the whole idea of defunding the police was a BLM-inspired debacle that seemed pretty hard to top. But now there's a contender, as hard as that might be to imagine. It was less than a year ago that a so-called Reparations task force in California announced a plan to pay $1.2 million to every descendant of a slave or of a, quote, free black person living in the U.S. prior to the end of the 19th century. In all, that proposal would cost something like $800 billion to implement, which is more than double California's entire state budget. But nevertheless, there was optimism that this would actually happen. After all, this task force had spent around 2 years crafting this proposal, so they were pretty confident that they could see it through. Watch.
The task force is recommending payments of up to $1.2 million for any African-American over 70 that can trace their ancestry to enslaved people, compensating them for what it describes as harm to their health, mass incarceration, over-policing, and housing discrimination.
Land was stolen from many, as in my husband's case. My husband has the deeds to these properties. That's state. This land belongs to my descendants forever and ever.
Several descendants told their stories in a public forum. Task force member Jovan Scott Lewis insists reparations are not payouts.
We are returning monies taken, returning monies stolen, returning the monies that had been lost based upon the kinds of dispossession and disenfranchisement.
So they say they're not taking the money from taxpayers and redistributing it. They claimed and said that they are returning stolen money, even though the taxpayers that they're taking the money back from didn't steal it in the first place, and the people they're giving it to never had anything taken from them personally. But, that's what they're saying. Imagine applying this logic, of course, to all of the Europeans who were sold as slaves in North Africa, or how about all the white people who are killed by black people every year in the United States, which is a vastly disproportionate number, or all of the descendants of these white victims entitled to reparations from all black people as well? Now, proponents of reparations never had a good answer to that question, or any question. They couldn't answer anything at all, in fact, including how they were going to pay for all this. So fast forward a few months, and it turns out that the descendants of slaves will not be getting any money in California. The whole idea became so overwhelmingly unpopular in California that even Gavin Newsom, who never misses a chance to genuflect before the BLM altar, wasn't a fan. So after considering the proposals of the Reparation Task Force, California lawmakers recently introduced a series of 14 bills, and cash payouts to the descendants of slaves are not included in any of the bills that are supposedly related to reparations. And yet, they're still calling these bills reparations anyway. Watch.
Well, right off the top, here's what the just announced reparations bills do not include: direct cash payments for descendants of the enslaved, as lawmakers behind the proposals insist reparations are about much more than just this.
This is a defining moment.
A defining moment, says Senator Stephen Bradford, just after he and his colleagues in the Legislative Black Caucus formally introduced more than a dozen bills they say will lead to the start of reparations for California descendants of enslaved black Americans.
If we say we value reparations and wanting to heal the harms of slavery in this country and in this state, we have to make this a priority.
It comes less than a year after the California Reparations Task Force submitted this 1,000-plus page recommendations report to the governor and legislature. In total, it featured 112 recommendations about how reparations could work in California, a state Bradford acknowledges was never formally a slave state, but one he says enacted policies since its founding in 1850 negatively impacting black Californians to this day. Other bills introduced include one to fund career education financial aid for red-lined communities, another to prohibit discrimination based on natural and protective hairstyles in all competitive sports within California, and one to restrict solitary confinement in California state prisons. But not included in any of the proposals, direct cash payments.
Well, it's a little embarrassing. Hopefully no descendants of slaves went out and spent $1 million in the past couple of months thinking that they'd get reimbursed. Because it turns out that's not happening. Instead, they're getting rid of solitary confinement and they are prohibiting discrimination based on hairstyles. That's what they're calling reparations. A bit of a step down, you might say. Now, as you'd expect, the most reprehensible anti-white racists in the country were deeply disturbed by this news. Semi-prominent race baiter Tariq Nasheed was especially furious. He wrote, quote, "This package does not include any cash payments to foundational Black Americans at all. It's a 111-page nothing burger dipped in nothing sauce." And that's true for the most part. And it's not often that this guy says anything true, but he does in this case. Still, buried in these 14 proposals are a few very bad and unconstitutional ideas. So Tariq Nasheed is getting some bad ideas out of this. He loves bad ideas. He's going to get a few, so hopefully it makes him feel a little bit better. They'll be re-implementing affirmative action, other race-based initiatives as well. And one California assemblyman who supports these bills, Corey Jackson, actually wants to amend California's constitution to permit laws that would, quote, "increase the life expectancy of, improve educational outcomes for, or lift out of poverty specific groups based on race, color, ethnicity, national origin, or marginalized genders, sexes, or sexual orientations." In other words, he wants to be able to pass laws that would only help non-whites, which currently would violate both the California and U.S. constitutions, of course. And that's what they're focusing on in California, a state that has no shortage of real problems, but they desperately want to turn the state into Rwanda and accelerate its decline even further. At the same time, it's very clear that they're not going to get everything they want. They are failing. These grifters are. The reparations grift is collapsing. And that's because the reparations grift and the whole race hustle scam as a whole depends on instilling and maintaining a deep sense of guilt in white people. But you just cannot keep an entire race of people crippled by undeserved guilt over ancient history forever. It doesn't work psychologically. Eventually that guilt turns into exhaustion, and the exhaustion turns into resentment, or at best, indifference. And that's when the scam blows back on the scam artists. We're seeing that happen more and more, actually. For example, I recently tweeted a statement that's completely uncontroversial to anybody with a baseline understanding of world history. Here's what I wrote. So a few days ago, I tweeted this, quote, "Slavery is world history. White people did not invent it and were not the first to practice it, but were the first to abolish it. The last place in the world to still have legal slavery was Africa. It wasn't fully legally abolished on the continent until 1981. Now, most people reacting to that post were agreeing with it because it's obviously true. Slavery was an unquestioned fact of life across the entire world for thousands of years. In fact, for thousands of years, nobody even thought to question the institution. Like the most enlightened minds in the world for thousands of years, they might have suggested that slaves should be treated humanely in some circumstances, but nobody rejected slavery fundamentally as a concept. This was the case, again, everywhere among all people for millennia. White Europeans were the first ones to argue that slavery as an institution should not exist at all, and that the slaves themselves have the right, have a human right to be free. Balance of Nature fruits and veggies are a great way to make sure that you're getting essential nutritional ingredients every single day. Balance of Nature uses an advanced cold vacuum process that encapsulates fruits and vegetables into whole food supplements without sacrificing their natural antioxidants. The capsules are completely void of additives, fillers, extracts, synthetics, pesticides, or added sugar. The only thing in Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies capsules are, well, fruits and veggies. Right now, my listeners can get 35% off their first order, and they'll also get a free fiber and spice supplement. Balance of Nature's fiber and spice supplement is a revolutionary fiber drink with a unique blend of 12 spices and whole foods. Our office loves Balance of Nature, uses it every day. There's never been an easier way to make sure we're getting our daily dose of fruits and vegetables. Experience Balance of Nature for yourself today. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Walsh for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com. Promo code Walsh for 35% off your first preferred order, plus a free bottle of fiber and spice. Keeping windshields clean is always a pain, especially in the winter. That's why I'm so grateful to have Windshield Wow. Windshield Wow is an innovative windshield cleaning device that uses two magnetic cleaning paddles, one on the outside and one on the inside of your car, to clean both sides of your windshield, all from the outside. Being able to clean both the front and the inside window at the same time is a game changer. I wish I had one of these years ago. Seriously, all you got to do is push around the outside paddle and the inside falls automatically, leaving your windshield squeaky clean. We had a pretty big snowstorm here in Nashville, and with all the dirt and salt piled up on the road, washer fluid just couldn't do the job. Luckily, I had a windshield wow in my trunk to save the day. That's what's awesome about Windshield Wow. It's so easy to throw these in the back of the car so you can always have a clean windshield. Windshield Wow applies firm cleaning pressure and is super thin to get into those tight dashboard areas. So what are you waiting for? Go to windshieldwow.com, use code Walsh at checkout for a special discount. That's windshieldwow.com and use code Walsh. So, the unique relationship between slavery and Europeans is that Europeans are the first ones who figured out that it's wrong. That's just a fact. It can't be denied. If I should be blamed for slavery because, white people participated in it, which they did, then I should also be thanked because white people abolished it. So where's my thank you note is what I'm asking. This is all kind of obvious to anybody with, again, a rudimentary understanding of history, which explains one of the prominent dissenters to my tweet who has no understanding of history at all. Henry Rogers, a.k.a. Ibram X. Kendi, was upset about this. And here's what he wrote in response to me. He said, quote, "The ultimate white savior statement." That's what he said. It's obviously a meaningless reply, but since Henry Rogers is supposedly a serious academic and supposedly not just a fraudster, I figured I'd follow up with him. And I asked Rogers if he'd like to have a live on-camera conversation about this issue. Now, and if you didn't know any better, you would think that he would jump at that chance. After all, he's an academic. He has a PhD. I'm just a podcaster with a high school diploma. So he could easily school me in a debate about history, couldn't he? I mean, surely he'll jump at that chance, right? Wrong. Kendi replied to my challenge 2 days later. It took him 2 days to think about it, think about what his answer would be. And here's what he said. "Many historians have already explained why your statements about slavery are wrong. It would be a huge waste of my time repeating what has already been shared with you." Well, there you have it. He doesn't have to debate me because many historians have already said that he's right. The historians already agree with him. So what is there to debate? Who are these historians? Well, don't worry about that. There's many of them. That's all that matters. Don't worry about who they are. It's just there's many. Who are they? They are many. They are legion. And why should their opinion preclude us from having a conversation on the topic? Well, don't worry about that either. In any case, the reaction to that conversation was between me and Ibram X. Kendi was overwhelmingly hostile to Ibram X. Kendi. Everybody recognized exactly what's going on. This esteemed anti-racist academic who runs an entire anti-racist center at a major university and who managed to burn through $40 million in grant money in just a couple of years can't allow his claims to be subjected to any scrutiny. Even scrutiny from a high school educated podcaster. Can't do it because he's an intellectual lightweight and his ideas are as hollow and weak as he is. That's yet another sign that the anti-racist reparations grift is collapsing. And so is this footage from UCSF, which is supposedly one of the leading universities and hospitals in the United States. They rang in Black History Month this year by inviting a black supremacist named Dante King to campus. And here's what he had to say. Watch.
Whites are psychopaths, and their behavior represents an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity with roots deep in their evolutionary history. How many of you could see the proclivity that evolved deep within the evolutionary history of whiteness? By show of hands. How many of you could see it? Some people are sitting here, oh no, I don't want to raise my hand. That's called denial.
No, that was the dumbest we've ever heard. And that's why they didn't raise their hand. That's what that was all about. Now he goes on like that for a while. You hear a lot about genocidal rhetoric from the left, but this is actual genocidal rhetoric. He's saying white people are psychopaths. And this is being said on a college campus. And like it goes without saying, I'll say it anyway, that if anything, if it went the other way and there was a white speaker up there saying, black people are psychopaths, that person would probably be arrested. I mean, they'd be banned from campus forever, but they would probably actually be arrested for saying that because it would be considered a hate crime. And yet this is what you get from a speaker on a college campus. And this is someone lecturing at an institution that trains doctors and treats patients. And that can't make white patients at UCSF very comfortable to hear that. If you're not familiar with King, by the way, you should know that he offers an 8-week course on diagnosing whiteness. So if you want to hear more about this, you can take the course. It will cost you $1,200, though. Now, it's not clear how much UCSF paid for this lecture. They're a public university, so presumably they used tax money to pay for it, however much it was. And this is the reality of living in California these days. Even if the reparations bill fails, public institutions will find ways to take your money to spread anti-white race hate. But you could tell from the response to this footage, which went viral immediately, that people are fed up with this propaganda. Just like the FAA footage I aired on this show last week, someone on the inside had to draw attention to this video, which they did. And there are whistleblowers who are tired of these race hustlers. The more the race scam collapses, the more whistleblowers will come forward. The only remaining support for race propaganda really comes from an important place, though, which is all of the largest corporations in the country. They're still committed to forcing this on us. So if you're watching the Super Bowl last night, especially the pregame, you would have noticed that. The NFL invited a woman to sing what's known as the Black National Anthem, which of course is a contradiction in terms. There is no Black National Anthem. There is no White National Anthem. There is one national anthem. It's for the nation. Any country that has multiple national anthems for different demographic groups isn't really a country. It's a collection of different countries split up along ethnic lines, and it will fall apart very quickly. But ensuring that this country falls apart is precisely the goal of the largest news outlets in the United States. So before the game, CBS interviewed the woman who sang this quote-unquote Black National Anthem at the Super Bowl, whose name is Andra Day, and listen to what she said.
I think, but I'm not unaware of the conversation surrounding the Black National Anthem at the Super Bowl, right? I think that's just a true conversation. And I think people, they are, I'm going to say this in really polite terms, but I think people are, change can be a scary thing for people, you know what I mean? But I think that it's a good thing, it's a healthy thing, because if you're not changing and growing, I think you're dying, right? Of course. So for me, I will tell you, I'm honored to be able to represent our ancestors and our culture in this way. But for me, even deeper than that, I'm a very spiritual person. Gail knows, we talked about this before. I'm a praying person. And so that's really what I'm hoping. My goal is to diminish myself and really be in service of the Spirit of God, whoever that is for people, to be a vessel, truly. And if people are able to sort of put down this kind of negative connotation surrounding this, or these prejudices or these ideas, then I think we could actually share in a really, really beautiful spiritual moment together. Yeah. And that is together. My desire, yes. And then to do the best that I can do. Hopefully it goes well.
Change is scary, she says. And if you're not changing and growing, then you're dying. And everybody at CBS pretends that's the most intelligent thing they've ever heard, but it doesn't even come close to making sense. Now, I mean, it's true that when something is changing and growing, that means that it's alive. But the other problem is that it's not necessarily good that a thing is alive, depends on what it is. A tumor changes and grows, but that's not a good thing. And so what she's really talking about is the racial division and race baiting. That's what she wants to see grow and change, which is something that we don't want. She's basically saying that we need racially segregated national anthems just for the sake of changing something. And then at the end, she implies even more nonsensically that somehow this will lead to unity. We'll be unified by having separate anthems. Even though the whole point of singing the anthem, the one national anthem, is to show our national unity. That's the whole point. But the point of this revival of the Black National Anthem is to take us back to the pre-civil rights era. This is not progress, it's regression. That's what this is a deliberate callback to. It's when the NAACP first started pushing the song after an NAACP official wrote it. And for the past 3 years, the NFL has been trying to equate this with the actual national anthem. The implication is that we're back where we were in the early 1900s. It's like when Joe Biden says that it's Jim Crow on steroids to require voter ID. They are desperate to convince us that we are living in a white supremacist hellscape, which obviously is nonsense. But again, it's falling flat. Andra Day performed this Black National Anthem before the commercial break, before the teams came out, several minutes before the national anthem was played. And to the extent that people responded to it at all, it was panned for the most part on social media. Very few people thought that it was inspirational or unifying or whatever. This is the response all of the post-BLM, post-George Floyd ideas are receiving now, from defunding the police, implementing reparations, the Black National Anthem. It's all falling flat. And what this means for race hustlers like Henry Rogers is that they're going to have to find new jobs soon. What it means for the rest of us is that, at long last, our moment of national racial insanity might eventually come to an end. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.